the end of the day, all this stuff, a lot of the stuff we all talk about is just noise. But what are the important things?
Right.
Where should your energy really be focused? You focus the energy, what I found, in the right spots, everything else takes care of itself.
This guest, I think, has taken a quiet second seat to his wonderful wife. He's a very successful entrepreneur, and I look forward to him telling his story. He owns 3 companies locally, and I'm sure he is on the board of his wife's company as well. You can see him running the streets of Ponte Vedra and Nocatee before sunrise, at least several days a week, right? I don't know, do you do it 7 days a week?
Close.
Okay. He sits field side at the Jags game. His birthday was last week. He is a collaborator. His employees always have a good attitude, and I think they look forward to working for him. Let's welcome the owner of Lunsford Home Inspections, Kingfish Pest Control, Joy Lights, and him and his wife with the Jacksonville World Producers magazine, Brian Lunsford, to the show.
Do I Venmo you now or after for that opening? Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
I am glad to got you on. I'm trying to, we had you scheduled, and I can't remember, was the Jags were still playing, but something had came up and you had to leave town or something there, and it was just too much logistics going on. But just to kind of start off the show, you guys came down from Atlanta, but you guys have become pretty big Jags fans, obviously, and financially, obviously involved with them through advertising and so forth with everything as well. I mean, what is just the passion for sport, or what's your draw there?
Yeah, well, I want to take a step back. The invite, you were kind enough to have me on, that I couldn't make last year. The Jags, as much as I love this show, the Jags did invite Kristen and me to fly on the team plane. So it was tough to say no to that. We got to go to New York right before Christmas and watch them beat the Jets. So that was awesome.
That's what I remember, because I remember seeing it on the social media. I knew there was something going on there with going out of town for the game, but that's right. So what was it? Just occasionally they have? Is that something that comes up every away game, or just occasionally when they have a room or something?
No, not for our level, not every game, but we'll take it when we can. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question too, to go back just a little bit on the Jaguars and moving from Atlanta. So we moved here, we're going on our 7th year, which is crazy, but does not feel like we've been here that long. I still feel like we're kind of the new people in the neighborhood, and it's certainly not the case. But yeah, I've always loved sports. I love the intersection of business and sports. And so I've always loved the NFL, and the opportunity came about. I'm kind of a risk taker, and the pest control company, Kingfish, is growing and doing well, but it's still, certainly for the level we came in at, probably too small to be an NFL partner.
Right.
With an NFL
official
team. Right.
And you're not national either. So,
right. We're not national. We're just local here for now in Northeast Florida. So I just took it as a branding opportunity to get a small business out there and just give it a shot and see what happens. And again, it intersects my passion, my love, which is sports. And I like politics and business as well, but I do love sports, and I love that intersection, and that's what it's able to do.
So now, how many years now you've been involved with
this? Will be season 3 coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that branding? No one really has a way to test it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I guess nationally you can tell some way, but locally seeing some of that name recognition.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question that I knew I would get before I even became a partner is, what's the ROI?
Right.
And I knew this before I even signed, is that it's going to be hard to track. It's one of those things where it's a branding build. It's kind of like a big radio campaign or something like that. You're building the brand. And if the growth is matching some of that, then you're doing well. And the way I look at it too is I'm having fun with it. So at the end of the day, in 10 years, if I look back and say, financially, that was a loss, I still had fun along the way. And where I'm at this stage of life, that experiences and having fun and making sure our team members are enjoying what they're doing, to me, that's critical. So I'm fine with it. No, but I feel good about it so far.
No, that's really a great attitude to have, because before we dig into my normal shows, since we're on the subject, I mean, obviously we get approached all the time, whether it's a little ball team here needs a donation or whatever, and you really can't expect any return on investment. I mean, it's really charity at that level. Yeah, if people on the ball team get to know you and you do get one phone call and you break even, or maybe make something out of that for that one service, great. But you have to have that. You have to do it because you enjoy it. Yeah.
Here's what it's done for me, like specifically the Jaguars connection. I'm in rooms now with people I would never have been in.
Yes.
It's elevated our leaders on our teams. It's elevated me as a CEO and owner. It's put me in positions to make deals that I never would have been able to do. It's helped me learn pick up mentors. And again, just the connections that I've made. If nothing else, when it's all said and done, I had fun, and the connections that I've made have been insane.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, there's some people who spend a lot of money for these masterminds to go and be in the room with some of these people that you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're paying that direct, just a check, just to be there. You're involved, and obviously being able to brand the company at the same time. Love it. Brian, as I normally get started, tell us a little about, growing up, and then, where'd you go to college? And obviously I know you guys, actually I do know where you went to the University of Georgia up in that area, but tell us about growing up and kind of when you were going to school, what were some of your aspirations? If I'm not mistaken, you were a poli-sci major?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I'm all over the map. You know what, again, this is just probably my personality, but to answer your question, I grew up outside of Atlanta, a little east of Atlanta, a town called Conyers, which I had no idea that would turn into like the Hollywood of the South. Conyers, Covington, Metro Atlanta is like booming right now for Netflix shows and Hollywood and stuff like that. And to answer your question as well, just dig a little deeper, I wanted to be like a movie director at first. Like that was honestly something that I had passion to do. And so I would gather up all the neighborhood friends and my siblings and cousins, and we'd constantly film movies where they're filming movies right now, not knowing that decades later it would actually be a spot where they would film real movies. From there, I kind of got into video and sports and doing things like that. Mm-hmm. And also became a sports producer at the Fox affiliate in Atlanta. So I was doing that while going to Georgia. I already had the media. I was in a top 10 market, so I didn't really need the communications degree or the journalism degree. So I asked, people at the Fox affiliate, I asked people at the University of Georgia, what would you recommend? They said, what else do you like? I said, I like politics, poli-sci major. So that's kind of how that happened. And it was an incredible run in college, had a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And then, as time went on, the business world started kind of calling my name. I was doing the TV thing kind of, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I saw a lot of burnout in the newsroom, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. People are kind of over it at that point.
So were you actually in the newsroom, or one of those reporters out in the field, or kind of working?
Yeah. So I was in the newsroom. I was in the studio. I was in the booth. I was the producer. I'm the guy talking in the anchor's ear. So Chipper Jones hit a 3-run homer while we were on the air. I was like, it's now 7-3, instead of the scores before that. So I loved it. It was a blast. Mm-hmm. And the high stakes action that comes with live TV, especially in a top 10 market when you have, a big TV audience, was just awesome. You had to make deadlines, and you got to meet all kinds of cool people and sports athletes and stuff like that. So it was really cool. But toward the end there, I started to notice that, and this is before I, had met Kristen and had a family and stuff like that, that 11 o'clock at night, people are divorced. They're not liking their life, and they're all good people, but it's a tough gig. Like you're up late. Yeah. Your vacations are different. Your holidays are different. And so I ultimately resigned and moved to the Virgin Islands. So did that. My brother and I lived down there, worked in a little diner, both of us had graduated from Georgia recently. You're
just like, hey, just go with the shirt on her back kind of thing?
Pretty much. Got rid of the car. Yeah. Gave the TV station plenty of notice. Resigned, went down there. We're having a blast doing that. But 6 months in, I would see the New York skyline on TV, and I started kind of getting the itch. So I was like, all right, now the itch to get into either back into television or get into the business world started to come. So that's kind of where it led from there.
All right. So you go back to Atlanta after your little hiatus.
Correct. Go back to Atlanta. My dad had a small pest control company.
Okay.
He didn't have a website. This is 2005. Didn't have a website or anything like that. My brother and I saw some opportunity there. There was really just, a couple of employees. So we came in and just did the basic stuff you would do. You add a website, bring customer care in, just some of the common sense fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And we did that. And then all of a sudden it started to get traction, grew that, and ultimately sold that. And
because he was just really small town, had enough business for, to make a moderate income for himself, and didn't envision where you and your brother kind of had a greater vision of what was going on.
Correct. He was content while we weren't. And we came in and we found a way to grow it. And like I said, we grew it, sold it to Terminex. And around that same time, Kristen and my family, our 2 kids, we moved down here. The kids were really young. They had not started kindergarten yet. So we were like, if we're going to kind of make that transition, now to be a perfect time. And it didn't really matter where we worked. Kristen was a stay-at-home mom working on her doctorate. Right. I'm behind a computer every day. And so I always wanted to live palm trees, golf courses, ocean, things like that. Right. My dad ultimately was down here as well in Neptune Beach, and still is. So there was just a lot of indicators to do that. And Kristen was born here. She's one of the rare natives. So it made sense. She got to come home, and it's been wonderful ever since.
So a lot of this it's just been your passion. And it sounds like even so far, and I think this story is going to continue of almost, what is the phrase, it's, you're not just lucky, but being prepared when luck meets preparedness or something like that.
Yeah.
There's some phrase. Yeah. There, and you've prepared yourself, or, the fact that you and your brother, and I think a lot of people, the young people out there, and I include even myself, not that I'm young, but, I saw things, but didn't know actually how to put the rubber to the road. I'm definitely a visionary in doing the things, but how to put the rubber to the road. And sometimes, I mean, we were talking pre-show about, the YouTubers and stuff like that. Some people see what they're doing now and don't realize that they've been doing this now 5, 6, 10 years. And they're constantly learning, constantly trying to get better, make a better video, do this. And now, of course, they're making money and gobs up, but some people don't even get out of the gate, so to speak. Where you could have told Dad, I'm not really interested in pest control. I'm just going to go get a, job with whatever, go back to the TV studio.
Yeah. More is lost in indecision than wrong decision. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, take a chance. Don't just sit on your hands, do something. And that's kind of what we did there with him. And then with our dad approaching him and buying him out. And then in 2020, after we sold the company the year before, my brother and I parted ways, and he's doing his thing in Georgia still, and I'm doing my thing down here in Florida, amicable. And that's when I brought Kristen into the business world, and I've just been having fun ever since.
All right. So you sell the company, you come here because you wanted to be with the palm trees and golf courses and so forth. So you put yourself into that position. Because if I looked on the LinkedIn, was Kingfish first before the home inspections?
So this is where it gets confusing, because back in Atlanta, they were all under the same umbrella.
Okay.
So, and also I didn't wait on an exit with one of my companies to make the move to Florida either. Like, we actually moved before we sold. So we moved in 2016 and we sold in 2019, because I look at it like I want a big life. I want to do bigger things. There's other things I want to do. And to me, the energy that Florida brings, and just for me personally, living down here in the sunshine and the activity and the active lifestyle and everything, just it fit everything that Kristen and me were looking to do. I mean, that was one of the big reasons. So,
all right. So I think here's one of the business questions, because I think that's one of the, especially, we know a lot of our real estate agent partners that are out there and so forth. One of their biggest steps is even just hiring the first assistant, right? And so they can continue to grow the, prospect and actually bring the business in, and let somebody on the back end. Here, you literally move out of state, 5 hours away, if you flew on a plane, it'd still take you 5 hours by the time you went to the airports. Sure. If you had to rush back for something and literally have to be there physically, was that easy for you, or the mindset of actually saying, hey, I'm not going to actually be down the street from the office anymore?
No, it didn't. It was one of those things where we knew it was something we were passionate about and wanted to do. So the decision to move was not hard at all. It was a matter of getting all the ducks in a row and then making the move. As far as to your point earlier about hiring, making that first hire is tough. Yeah, you got to figure it out. Like, we didn't know what we were doing back then. We made terrible decisions. I learn now every day from stuff that we did back then, that I did back then, that now I try to improve on. So the thing is, you just have to take the step. There's never going to be the right time in business. I mean, that's what I've learned. Business is life. Life is business. There's never the right time. You just got to make a move. You cannot, if you're just staying static and not being dynamic, then nothing's going to happen.
Obviously you guys created the right people there. Well, your brother, I guess, was still there. So, you still had that ability, but the business sounds like you had it more or less running on its own, that you were out of the production side. You weren't doing the physical things. You were handling, but you slowly brought in people that you trusted to and handle the business and literally go hands off.
Yeah. I mean, I've never even done a home inspection. I own a home inspection company.
Right.
People corner me and say, well, you must know about termites, and I can talk about it in an elevator, but I have people that are very smart.
I've been to a couple conventions.
Right. I have people that are very smart, very passionate about termites, about home inspections, about lighting, whatever it is. Like, we hire those people to do those things. And then I love the business side. I love the culture side. It doesn't mean I like spreadsheets and all that. Those are fine. That's part of it.
Right.
What I mean is the energy that business can bring to life can bring to business, how we can be a platform for other people to do big things. They can live big lives. Just bringing that joy to them. That is where I'm at now in my career. Like, that is what I want to do. and joy can be looked at in multiple ways. And that's actually, one of the things we talk about every day, bringing the joy. It's not just a motto. It's not just something we say.
Right.
We do say it, but it's something we live by. That, in the micro sense, or very practically wise. Yeah. If you're in line at Publix, bring joy to somebody behind you, or your team member, bring joy to them. Customers, obviously, clients, realtor partners. That's all obvious stuff that you need to be doing, at least in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I'm positioned now, where my biggest drive right now is bringing joy long-term to our teams. So the people within our team. So if there's someone that's ready, and there's multiple that every single day are out there working as hard as they can to, bring joy to others and grow these companies, then I want to help them meet their goals, whatever that is. That might mean creating a foundation. That might mean financially, whatever it is, but I want to be that vehicle for them.
Have you always had, Kristen said the phrase, you've mentioned basically you're willing to take chances on certain things. You say that's logical. That could work. And I can imagine Joy Lights is one of those most recent ones, mm-hmm. right? There is a demand for people to hang up Christmas lights. We're in an area where people make a reasonable wage, and people shouldn't be climbing ladders that aren't experienced in climbing ladders and getting out on a roof. So it makes total sense. I mean, we've been using a service for years ourselves, and you just, obviously you had the financial ways to just, to go and say, yeah, let's roll with it. Now, what are we going to do in the off season? Well, now we can do, lights. But that attitude of that entrepreneurial attitude of, willing to step out there and willing to fail. And it was very interesting. This morning, I was kind of just flipping through Instagram, and there was a reel in there. Everyone talks about, Trump had 50 bankruptcies. Well, Walt Disney bankrupted himself 7 times in a much slower time. And it's because those guys went out and took chances. Where did that come along? Is that something you just intrinsically always had? Or was the confidence working with Dad and what you guys did there give you that confidence to take another step?
I think it's also curiosity. Going back to Joy Lights, how that was kind of born. There's multiple layers to why Joy Lights started, and we started it last fall. Mm-hmm. Number one is it fit our vision, our mission, our culture. And this is I'll explain. So mm-hmm. we paid someone else as well for the first time the year before, the Christmas before.
Yep.
And I remember driving in with the kids and Kristen, and we were coming in for they had just put them up that afternoon, and we came home. It was already dark, and the joy it brought to our faces, like the kids were like all of our faces were lit up with joy.
Right.
And so it fit that immediately. Cool. That was number one. Number two is that we have, with these service companies, pest control and home inspections, they go seasonally in a sense. No matter how you slice it, when the colder months come, everything slows down a little bit. It depends to the degree, but it does slow down depending on the year as well. Mm-hmm. And so what immediately we thought was this would give, first of all, home inspectors, they carry ladders. Pest control guys, they carry ladders. They're all familiar with homes.
Right.
This would then give them an opportunity in the slower months to pick up more income if they would like by crossing over to this other company. So, it fit the culture. It fit all of that. And then it also was able to do that for these other team members. And then from there, it's like, hey, we have passionate leaders. I mean, I mentioned earlier some of the people that are just every day out there. I can name, there's a whole list of them, but the 2 VPs, Brian Westcott, Kingfish VP, mm-hmm. and Michelle Foster, Lunsford VP, they're like no other. I mean, they're fantastic at what they do, but they do it with passion. They do it with joy, and they align perfectly with Kristen and me. So mm-hmm. they took it from there. I mean, they took it. So yes, while at first it was a seasonal idea, it's a permanent and seasonal lighting company now. So we do stuff all year round, and they mm-hmm. took it and they ran with it. And that's where it comes. That's like my days now as I look forward is how can I encourage them? How can I support them? But then also long-term, how can I bring them joy to their lives? I want them to live the biggest life they want. And if these companies are a vehicle, then perfect.
All right. Now we like to think everything's all sunshine and roses, as Rocky says, right? But life's not sunshine and roses. There must have been some mistakes, some setbacks.
Tons.
Tell us about, a couple of things that obviously, we just mentioned, hiring,
yep.
And obviously that's always a learning process. Yep. You never know. As some people say, you could throw a pile of resumes up in the air and, take the one on the top and you just don't know.
Yeah.
But there is a little more science to it. If you've made some mistakes to be able to understand what the good traits are, right? I mean, yeah. And so give us some setbacks that you've had and what'd you do to overcome?
Yeah, we have a ton. I mean, I could go on. This could be the longest segment. But And this is what I said, I learned
Yeah.
from these things. But I mean, there were years where, we were in growth mode in Georgia. We didn't even care about the bottom line. So we were top line revenue, profit, was way down the list for us. And there were times, even, we ultimately ballooned to around 100 employees. There were times where we're looking at it going, are we going to make payroll? I mean, there were some times during some of those years that, yes, the growth was there and everything was awesome, but the bottom line wasn't great. And so that's number one. Yeah, for more than a decade now, I've focused on profit, and we don't run our companies with any debt or anything like that.
Right.
It's the bottom line is what we look at. Top line revenue is great, and it's a good vanity number, and it's fun to go after awards and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, when the curtain's pulled back, what do you have there?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're working really hard on. We're not where we want to be totally. Obviously, it's a process. We're always trying to build and get better on it, but the more profits you have, the more you can then share those with the people that are driving that company forward. And that's the ultimate goal.
Or, jump out to a new idea like Joy Lights or something like that.
Correct.
To be able
It gives
to
you
go out there. But entrepreneurship, I think there's nothing in those businesses that sets like, the interest rates rising and all, that's a little bit of slowing down. There's not enough inventory. So their sales are limited versus what it was 2 years ago. And you're constantly having to, feel the heartbeat of that all the time. And if it slows down, what are you going to do? Are you going to cut? And I think a lot of people's vision is, I want to be big, but really in reality is, what time do you want to go home? And Are you going to be sweating it out when you see the payroll, come across and like, ooh, that's coming out of the checking account.
Right.
Do I need to move some money from this account to, cover that and make that happen?
Right.
And I mean, and sweating that out, those are real things of real entrepreneurs and small business.
Yep.
And making those things happen. I think, and you've gestured to it several times already, your people. You've talked about your 2 vice presidents. What are some of the things that you've, in the hiring process, something you did early, which I imagine was just hire somebody who would actually fill out the application.
Correct. We were begging people back then at the beginning.
Yeah. To now where I got Billy Wagner's, I got his book over there on the shelf, where he has a pipeline of people that he creates, although he has great retention, but he always has somebody there if he's going to expand or someone leaves. He immediately has someone who he's been trickling on or, staying in touch with for a while is kind of one of the things too. What are you guys doing? And then of course you're doing a little more labor intensive work than an insurance agency. Where'd you start? And then what are you guys doing now? And I know you're always tweaking it.
Yeah. Well, we started on Craigslist back in Georgia. So, and to your point earlier, we would take whatever we could get. They came in the door. We were basically not interviewing them. We were basically begging them to come work for us at the very beginning. These are pest control technicians. Early on when we first were getting started, because my brother and I knew that we needed to get behind the computer. And ultimately that's where we were. But yeah, it's normal things like Indeed and other places like that. But what I have found that the sign of a healthy culture what you start to notice is that people are coming to you. So yes, we'll do the traditional things to get the, awareness out there, but we're finding that it's connections that, hey, I heard you guys might have an opening, or hey, even if you don't have an opening, I see what you guys are doing there. We want to come join you guys. So nowadays, that's how it is. Back then, whatever you could do.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, in that level of job as the pest control person, they're taken care of, and there is a level that they need to get paid. The dealing with, what is the right compensation? How many times, I mean, over the years, between Atlanta and years here now, that you're constantly like tweaking it, trying to find where that sweet spot is. Obviously, as anyone, you want to pay someone what they're worth, but you don't, overpay them either, because then that takes away from your profits or things the company could do. Because if you're paying someone more than any other pest control company is in the area, but just constantly balancing that. What are some of the things that you guys do to kind of stay on top?
Number one is explain what you're trying to do to that potential hire. We lay it out at the very beginning, what we're trying to accomplish, what our goals are, what our profit, what our revenue, whatever the metrics are, we lay it out so they understand there's a framework we're working with here. As far as specifics, just to make sure we're in the ballpark, I mean, the cool thing about what we have going on here in Jacksonville is that we are friends with our competitors. I'll pick up the phone or I'll text and we'll ask, hey, what are you paying this level of person? How's it going for you? And we'll get 2 or 3 different companies to kind of mastermind on it. And so we have that collaboration. I mean, again, when I look at the evolution, at least me personally, early on, and certainly this is more of a way back, even it goes even more, decades into it, just in general in America. But I think there was I have the idea, I'm going to hide it. It wasn't a very collaborative environment. And what I have evolved to, and certainly I think even America, and I think as we continue to move forward, it comes to is that, yes, competition matters. Yes, it's fun. Yes, we can be competitive, but we can all still win as well. And the fact is that we can be one of the bigger home inspection companies in Jacksonville, but the market share, if you look at the percentage, there's still a ton of pie out there. Even add the 2 or 3 top guys, there's still a ton of market share to be had out there. So why not collaborate? Pick up something from a competitor. They pick up something from you, and everybody can win by collaborating and masterminding. And also, ultimately, what does that do? That helps the customer. That helps the realtor partner. That makes the transaction go smoother. So it's just a different way to think. I think some industries are way ahead with this. Some are way, way behind. So you can kind of tell. It just depends on the industry. But I can tell you in our businesses, that's what we're trying to do.
So is that something, I know you and Austin and some of the others have gotten together.
Yeah. Charles.
Yeah. Was Kurt Stein in there?
He's not in that group you're talking.
Yeah.
He bet one.
But the collaboration part of it, so that's an interesting thing, because I know I could tell you right now in the mortgage world, no way.
Yeah.
They where the real estate agents, top real estate agents I talk to, they understand collaboration because they are trying to, as Susan Hansen mentioned on the last show, the ultimate goal is to sell that person's house and that person buy it. And the 4 of you got to get together, 2 real estate agents, 2 customers, right? And make that transaction happen. So there has to be a collaboration because you all have the same goal, is, transfer that home. But I mean, is that something that, here locally that, you just got on the phone and started talking to some of these guys? Did it happen naturally? I mean, how did you actually get that going?
Well, pest control aside, home inspection specifically, since you mentioned it, there's a large group that we're all part of. And we kind of really became friends through that.
It's like a national association.
Kind of a national association. Exactly. That actually stands behind some of the stuff I was just talking about. I don't think conference as traditional conference. This is your energy. This is getting ready to do big things. This is nothing about a home inspection. When we meet with the competitors, you mentioned those, they're all great guys. We're not talking about anything about an HVAC or anything like that. We're talking culture. We're talking numbers. We're talking big picture stuff. We're talking how can we help our team get to where they want to go. It's none of this other stuff that, to be quite honest, some of us don't even really know about or care about. It will be good on the end of it because we hire great people to run that side of it.
Right.
But that's not our job. But you mentioned earlier too, like the collaboration and that culture. Well, this is why Kristen is doing what she's doing and just killing it with Jacksonville World Producers. Her love language is helping others and encouraging others. And I could not, when you think of someone to head up a company, there's not a better person on the planet, in my opinion. A little biased, but that could run any real producer, publication across the country. There's a lot of them. There's over 130 now. Specifically though, for this time at this place, I think Chris, she is all the things I mentioned earlier as well, just positive, bringing the joy, all of that. I mean, she has helped shape me. So we talk about my evolution. I attribute a lot of it to obviously books and things like that, but really ultimately it comes down to her influence. Not her telling me something, just kind of watching the way she operates, and it just rubs off.
Right. I think would you agree? A lot of people though have the disconnect of, the literal giving and mistaking it, and for lack of better words, but you still got to ask to get paid. You know what I'm saying? There's that thing where people are they fear that part of like, I'd love to give you all my time, but eventually I do have to eat too. You know what I'm saying? And where there's that disconnect and say, she's going out there and obviously putting these people together, in the Jacksonville World Producers and doing a lot to, help promote, the agents and give them some recognition and so forth in our space. A lot of collateral benefits, obviously, for your other companies and so forth. So that's what I love. I love the way you guys just have the whole circle there. That's brilliant. But the giving, but eventually it's also a business. And that separates a lot of people, because I think a lot of people have the attitude, I'd love to give, but I don't have anything to give.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily dollars that you're giving them. You're creating opportunities.
Correct.
And I think she does it very well.
Well, the fact is that she explains And she's the first person to tell you, she's not a salesperson, but she explains what we're doing honestly and talks about the value it brings because it does. And we're also not desperate. So we don't have to have that particular company to come into Real Producers. If they fit the criteria, fine. If they don't feel like they fit with us, that's okay too. That's just not the right fit. And we're not desperate. Well, there's other people knocking down the door that want to be in. So that's the big thing, just showing. She does a great job of walking the walk. And the conversations are kind of, by the time she's talking to someone on the phone or on Zoom, that's almost the cherry on top. I mean, that's the very end. Like she has already shown the value in it by the events, by the other people around town talking about it. So by the time they're to that point with her one-on-one, they're going to join.
Right. I wanted to step back. I wrote home inspection down here on a national level, and the lead back around to the collaboration in that area. Having talked, I think it was, talking to Kurt Stein, talking to Austin Gray, talking about there's just a lot of home inspectors that are really just mom and pop shops. They are just truly, he's an inspector. Maybe they got someone answering the phone, which might be their wife, or maybe they do hire somebody or virtually whatever answering the phone. Is that true that around the country? My perception is that most home inspection companies are basically probably just a couple.
100%. And they're, from what I've found, learning more about that industry, they're all good guys, well-intentioned. But the problem is they look at the home inspection as the end all be all when that's important, but it's not everything. And so they don't understand that your culture, your energy, what you're doing the night before determines what you're going to do the next day. Keeping yourself physically fit, reading up on the latest trends, whatever it is, they're just not in that mindset. They're in that old school, I'm going to get in the truck, I'm going to go do the technical service, I'm going to come home, feed the family. There's nothing wrong with that. Some guys actually choose that route, and that's totally fine too. But the ones that are trying to grow and they're trying to get to 2 or 3 inspectors and they run into these walls, a lot of times what we're finding is, and just talking to a lot of people around that industry, is that they won't show up when it's time. They won't show up for themselves. They also treat, and this goes across all the industries, but what I don't ever negotiate with is family time over work over family time. And not just me and Kristen, but our entire team. So if there's ever a situation, and there is all the time, where team members need to go see something, or recital, a soccer game, whatever it is, this work will be here. That at the end of the day, it's important, yes, and we're going to do a fantastic job, but I need you to go be energized and inspired, and don't miss these fleeting moments with your family. And what we find is, for years doing this, they come back, they'll go to war for you. I mean, they want to be a part of something like that, where you encourage them to go take time off, take vacations, come back inspired and ready to go.
That's a very interesting point. And everything we're talking about here, for someone's listening right now, this is small business. I mean, larger, the Home Depots and so forth, they have this issue as well, but they have a little stricter guidelines. You can't go and see the CEO that isn't typically around, unless you're in their Atlanta headquarters or something.
Right.
But where you're reachable, they know pretty much where you live and you're not that far away. Small business situation, but that growth pushes that you go against. Like someone might say, well, hey, the realtor called, we got to get out there right away. Well, do we? I remember one thing I was talking at Quicken Loans was, if the customer, we're dialing out all the time. That's what you're doing. Unless you're literally working on a loan. If you're not, it's a dialer, right? And they're feeding your calls and you're just, either, trying to take an application. If a customer calls back, maybe someone you have in process, there are always things was don't answer the phone right away. Let it go to voicemail. Then when you finish, finish what you're doing, then call them back. But the presence that you are busy, and you're not going, I don't believe, and you can touch on this, because you're unable to run out there at the drop of a hat, because, that employee who would have done it has the recital to go to, or the 3:00 basketball game at the high school or whatever it is. So you let him go do that. The inspection is going to be done, scheduled for the next day, is not the end all. And I think a lot of us feel at a small business that we have to drop the hat and run. And I know real estate agents do it all the time, instead of, hey, this is our schedule. We have this time we're doing this and we're doing this. We need to go, get physical therapy, whatever it is. That's our time. Set the time. You tell that customer, I have an appointment, but I'll get to you as soon as I get back, or tomorrow morning I'll call you first thing, whatever it is. But it's that balance of that we're going to lose the fear of losing that customer.
Yeah, we're playing the long game. So what I find is these top agents in particular, they understand it's rare that we'll miss an inspection because we have other inspectors that are awesome and they'll step up and go do it as needed. But the times where we have to reschedule something, these top agents, they're in the same boat. They're building the same cultures. They get it. They respect that. As a matter of fact, if they hear that an inspector had to miss something for a child, they probably respect the company and that inspector even more. It's a little bit of a headache for them that day to kind of coordinate with the buyer or whatever, but they would understand that, especially considering that for us, communication is massive. Transparency is important. So we're just going to tell them the truth. We're going to be upfront about it. And you do that. And certainly it's worked for us for a long time. Just be honest and play the long game and it'll all work out. And to your point earlier, yes, all of our companies, it just worked out this way where obviously they can all feed each other, but there are plenty of top producers that we deal with all the time in Jacksonville World Producers that for whatever reason, they have someone else they like on the home inspection side. No worries. Like we go have coffee with them. We hang out with them. We support them in everything they do. So it's just a different mindset. Like it's totally fine. Like if we're there, if you ever need us on those other companies, but if you got somebody you like right now, cool. No worries.
I take the same attitude. The reality is, we're old enough to realize stuff happens to people's lives. And, if you're there at the moment of their greatest need, you can score a lot of points. And just being available and having the good, instead of getting bitter about it, we all get, oh, they chose that other company. Yeah, we have that moment, as anyone will, but to drive on to know that I'm here for the long haul. I'm here consistently and stuff happens. Someone screws up a loan. I heard, I had a realtor tell me that the other day. They broke off a relationship with their lending partner for a while because of, couple things added up and then a loan got screwed up. And so they decided to go and search out other ways, other partners. So it's happening all the time, or someone gets transferred out of, the loan officer here, spouse gets transferred and they're gone. Yep. Now that whoever they were servicing need help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the heart that ultimately matters in any business. Like if your customers, partners, or whatever see that heart, that's really the most important thing because they know you're working on their behalf to get the best job done you possibly can. I think of like, if you go to a restaurant and a waiter or waitress is working their tail off and they spill a drink all over you, there's some people that may get very mad and not tip them. If that person is working their tail off and apologize and obviously made an honest mistake, I'll be inclined to tip them more because they're going to learn from that. They're going to get better. It's a mindset shift. Some people choose to kind of take the opposite of joy. And what our teams, plural, choose is to go with joy. And it's funny how it all works. When you're kind to other people, it comes back around.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Your example there was awesome because I do see that in the restaurants. Now I do see others where waitresses like upset me when I order, they come by, hey, you want something? Oh yeah, we need a refill. Okay, great. And all of a sudden they disappear. They forgot about you. Yeah, that upsets me. But I do know when they're hustling and so forth. And like I said, you feel that, you pick that up because we've all been there. If you haven't waited tables, you haven't done, if you haven't actually done and dug holes or, that kind of stuff when you were, younger, you don't appreciate a lot of what these people are doing every day.
100%.
I was talking to somebody, we were talking just economics right now. I'm feeling for a lot of people because the cost of everything's just doubled and I know their income hasn't doubled. So it's just like, I feel sorry because I could go out. Yeah, we could stop at a fast food restaurant, which is pretty much more expensive. You might as well go to a sit down place than fast. Yeah. And I feel for some of those people because they already were working hard. Now that's doing, but that's my little political stand. Go off on that for a little bit. I wanted to circle back. Okay. So I gestured or, you agreed with me that majority of the home inspectors out there are, 1-2 man operation type stuff going on. And God bless them. They probably provide, I would just like small businesses in America provide 50% of that industry's people. To get together, because your biggest challenge on a higher level with several of these other companies that you're talking about and across the spectrum where you are having crews, whether you got some of these big electrician crews or plumbing companies that got, 20 vans and so forth and crews out there. Your biggest thing is that culture, hiring the right people and keeping the ball rolling. what are some of the things that you've discovered to, give some small business owners on here might be watching some insights of, again, that stuff that didn't work, and then what you're, doing today and always working on.
Yeah. Slow to hire, fast to fire. I mean, if there's cancer, cut it. You got to cut it out. That's number one. If you've got somebody on your team and you have a gut feeling, that, or even more so, that's the case, then you got to part ways, and you got to part ways fast. That's huge. Another thing is during the hiring process, and I've, over time, when you add it all up, probably 150 people, 200 people, when you add it all up, I've hired almost every time, and probably every time, if I really went back and looked at it, that if you have a gut feeling during that interview process, you're probably right. Go with it.
Go with your intuition.
Yeah. And don't hire out of desperation. I know we get in these cycles where you get crazy busy. You got to bring in people fast. It will come back to bite you. The loss of momentum, the loss of time training, the loss, obviously paying the person, and just all these, the time, which is critical, you lose is way too high to risk hiring the wrong person. And we still do it every now and then, but we've gotten a lot better at it. We're trying to, again, I don't do the hiring anymore, but we talk to our team about, if you have that gut feeling, go with it.
Well, it's constantly, like you said, all of a sudden, a couple people quit in the same month or week or whatever, and you're caught behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Or all of a sudden, interest rates drop, and all of a sudden everybody's got their house up for sale and everybody wants to buy it. And all of a sudden you got all these orders coming in for whatever it may be. I made that statement. I lost my train of thought.
I was just saying to that point real quick on it is tricky, because there's times where you have customers banging down the door and you don't have enough people. It does happen. But what I've also found is that the people that you have that are there pushing that business forward, they'll find a way to make it happen. They'll find a way to make it happen. That might mean hiring some kid part-time to go do some labor with a pest control technician, whatever it is unbelievable that when circumstances dictate it, whether it's a bad economy and a bad situation or a really good one in the case we're talking about, the people that want to be with you and you want to have on that team long-term, they'll find a way to get it done.
Hey folks, this episode was produced by Streamline Media, the #1 media company for helping brands generate content that converts. I knew I wanted to start a podcast to reach more people and bring value to the world, but I did not have the time or the knowledge. Streamline Media became my secret weapon to building my show. They handle all my back-end work, production, and strategies to keep my show going strong. If you're in the real estate business and looking to make content that generates more leads and brings in more revenue, check out the Streamline Media link in the show notes and discover how partnering up can supercharge your path to real estate excellence.
You've created 2 questions here that I think are so crucial to any small business, and especially one where we're somewhat fluid at different times and different demands, or, like I said, somebody that you don't expect to quit or leave or whatever, or get sick or whatever it might be and has to leave. Staffing, when you're working with your VPs on your levels, I think in my past experience in telecommunications, working in a retail store, 20 some years ago, the big corporations just keeping the right amount of people there, right? You don't have that extra person that really can polish things off, so to speak, so that everybody's not overloaded and then for doing a poor job. What's your attitude when it comes to, the amount of staff that these companies, based on the business levels you're at?
Well, the cool thing is there's numbers out there that we can gather, and we have our own numbers. We have competitors that'll share numbers. We have other data points we can pull in, and we're building for scale. We're not looking to be the biggest company, the fastest, but we're definitely looking to grow. If we're not growing, then we're not, what are we doing all this for? Why are we even?
Well, the joy part, because, joy comes when you're a little content yourself, right? You're a little happy and you can spread joy. It's a little easier. When you're under the gun because you're having to do extra 2 inspections today because too many people called out sick, and you're having to cover stresses, and your quality control goes down, right? Are you an overstaffer? In a sense, making sure you always have, maybe 1 or 2 extra people than what you really need, just so everyone can work at a pace and do really.
Sometimes, there may be situations where, Kingfish will hire a couple of extra technicians when we know spring is coming, or same thing in the home inspection side. Yeah. Our team will look at everything as a whole and see what makes the most sense. You look at finances, you look at the market. You're looking at a lot of different indicators. We're going to hire the right people. As a matter of fact, it's another point on hiring is that we've seen talent come about when we didn't need them, but we still hired them. So, and when we probably shouldn't hire them yet financially, we still have, because if you can grab good talent, you grab it.
Yeah.
So that's big. So I wouldn't say we're one way or the other as far as how we staff, but we want to have the right people for sure. And then as time goes, we'll add or subtract from there.
Well, I mean, again, go even to our agents, right? They'll talk about, I got all this business, and their quality has to go down because they're not following up. They're not inputting names in their CRM because they're the one woman band, right? They're running around doing all this stuff, where if they took the time to have that one extra hire that's actually doing that stuff, then everyone's working at a comfortable pace and can really do well. That's kind of my, yep. I see too much of that in the large corporations, just trying to run just as what they need. Yeah. And where I see the guy who's so many levels up, sitting fat, where it's like, if you actually you'd sit fatter if you actually added this extra staffing on here, so the books are kept well. I remember when I was in retail, that was my problem. I was the sales guy. I could teach everybody to sell. We were moving the thing, but I didn't have an assistant manager in the store to take care of the back end stuff, the phones that were coming in that needed repair, and they would pile up. And then every night making sure and going back and checking, the books, make sure that, the cash deposits and all that things were lined up correctly. So when the auditors came in, everything was perfect. Right. And when the company changes its mind from sell to, hey, we need our back office things, like, hold on a second. Yeah. you hired me to run the fly pattern. Now you're asking me to block. I mean, come on.
To your point, if you're not forecasting, then you will be behind.
Yeah. So. Yeah. You said your people will find a way. When you said that, my first thought was they're finding a way because you're giving them the tools and the authority to find a way. In your growth, have your ability to, like you said, hire the right people and then trust in them to do it?
So I've evolved big time over this. I mean, there was a time in Atlanta that if it's a marketing item, I wanted to see it and I wanted to kind of double check and, jump right in. I'm a million miles away from that now. What I've found is that by stepping back and letting them do their thing, yes, some mistakes might happen. They may have been able to avoid if I jumped in there, but it's not worth the cost of that saps their creativity, that saps their energy. Let them do it. And I find out what I've come to learn is that oftentimes they create something better than I would have anyway. So it's a win. It's a total win. I'm able to then zoom out a little bit, focus on the next market or the next business or whatever. Right. And they're actually producing incredible content, inspections, leadership, whatever it is across the board.
Well, I mean, I always use the analogy as salespeople or your technicians that are out and all your companies that are out there are the point of the sword. And you have to have the right supply sergeant or whatever that keeps the lines of supplies coming to them. And that, like, whether that's physical or just, you don't want them bogged down, worried about the fuel bill on the van or whatever, or the van needing repairs or something, if you got a fleet of vans out there. So, when they come in the shop in the morning, they need to know that those chemicals are there that they need to, for the pest control side to utilize that. They need to have their tools. And when they do, they can excel at what they're doing. If they start worrying about, hey, Brian's up there goofing off and playing golf and going to the Jags game, and I can't even get, another ladder or whatever it is, you know what I mean? That type of attitude, it starts to create a negative thing that the person behind the scenes can really set the attitude for everyone. Yeah, really. And that's looking out. That was so when you said find a way, my immediate thought was they find a way because you're giving them the long leash to do it.
The tools you mentioned, those are minimum standards. Like, in my opinion, if you're going to run a successful business, you've got to have that and then some. But I think, what you mentioned, Jags, games, golf, I want them to be out there with me. I want them to, whatever, they know that's my passion, but their passion might be going hunting or fishing or whatever it is, tennis. I want them to go do that. I want to see pictures of them doing that. Again, to me, when I'm 100 years old, looking back, hopefully maybe even older, and looking back, we're not going to, the home inspection report's important, but at the end of the day, doing these things with family and friends and for yourself and your mental health and your physical health and all that it's not even close. It's much more important. So we want them to do all those things. And again, then what happens is you'll get those team members you want because they fit that. They come in and they'll do whatever it takes to satisfy everybody and exceed expectations of everybody we work with.
You mentioned earlier, the being involved in the Jags has put you in rooms. We all talk about the 5 people that we surround ourselves. So you're mixing and mingling with some of these international successful people, but they just, as I look at Ryan Serhant's book, Big Money Energy, he describes how walking down the streets of New York and these Wall Street guys are just, the big money energy that they put off. But the way you're creating your companies, the culture, you've mentioned that word as well, is there to surround yourself by other leaders, other business owners that have that same attitude, and they're just constantly molding that. Okay. What are some of the things that you've picked up? Have you gotten any direct tips from someone you'd like to immediately went and implemented into your company, or just some, greater vision, some of the stuff that you got from these interacting with these people?
There's definitely some of that, but where I'm at now, for me, it's harmony over hustle. So I am trying to get more uncomfortable every day with things that I know are somewhat uncomfortable for me, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, both physically working out or whether that's trying to seek out mentors that I feel like are way too high to go after, but I still do. And what's crazy is that, you try that, they respond, you get to go meet with them, then that leads to another mentor. And that leads to an even higher, more prestigious, whatever your,
100%,
whatever that looks like to you. But It is some of the people that I now have in my phone that I can text some of them, from celebrities to pro athletes to these big time business owners you're talking about. To me, that is where I'm trying to hone myself now, hone my skills on being a better leader, because they're obviously doing something right at these levels, and they are more than willing to share. And I have tried. I snuck a letter to meet someone that I didn't have their phone number, email address. I snuck it in a Christmas card. I'll try anything. And it took a while, but I ultimately got the meeting.
So you in a Christmas card, you added a little note to the person you're sending the Christmas card to hopefully introduce you to someone else.
So what it was we're blessed to live around a lot of very successful people,
right?
And Kristen knows a lot of people in our neighborhood, in particular the wives,
right?
And so she knows the wife really well.
Okay.
I didn't know the husband really well. I want to talk to the husband. So that's an example. And I won't name any names because a lot of these you guys will recognize. But so I hijacked the Christmas card with my letter, and it took a few months. I got it. It worked, and learned so much. And that continues on today.
Do you find that they're actually somewhat flattered by the fact that you want to chat with them, that you want to hear about their experiences?
I find that they are just like we all are. They are just like we all are. They just took the shot. They just didn't stop. So many people, so many of us, I feel like we get right to the edge and then we retreat. And these are the people that said, it's looking crazy, but I'm going to keep on. And they push on through just a few more feet and they're there. I think that's what I've found. That's what struck me, is that, man, they are normal just like we are. They're just finding ways to get things done.
I've said that. You use that analogy, the swing the axe one more time, swing that pitchfork one more time, and where they turn around. And I know there's a cartoon about it where the guy's in the mine, he's chipping away, and he's one chip away from the golden nugget that's behind here, or the diamond, and they turn around and walk out, and the next guy comes and swings it one time and it falls out, right? 100%. And I think we've all do. I think we're seeing a lot of in our industry, in the real estate realm, as well as I'm sure as real estate agents are falling out. I know there's loan officers falling out. I'm sure there's inspection companies that might be, obviously being sucked under because of that type of thing. And that they've got to figure a way to hang on, especially, right now during this just uncertain time it could turn around tomorrow. It could be 6 months from now. We don't know I think we're in a bubble here in Northeast Florida, where other areas it's not so hot. So we don't fully know, but you just got to hang in there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to go thin. And I say to myself every morning, I was like, okay, the Lord's testing me today. You're testing me, right? You're testing me. I'm going to swing one more time. I'm going to swing the axe one more time. I'm going to keep doing it. But you're living it, and you're around these people who are attesting it. You're not reading it in a book. but you're actually talking to people who are telling you this.
These are people who have been around. I mean, I was around in '08 when that market was around, and we actually grew in market share. I feel like through COVID, like to your point earlier about just hang on. But the ones that don't, that's okay too, because you can actually pick up market share when things go down, normalize, or go up. When it goes up, everybody's winning and nobody's really exposed. When it starts to go down, go back to '08 or you go to an uncertain time, like even to an extent now, they get exposed. So if they're not doing the fundamentals, they're not picking up the phone, not calling, they're not doing what you need to do in whatever the profession is that you're in, it's the spotlight's on and they won't be around long. And that's all right. It kind of weeds out the people that probably shouldn't be in there anyway right now. Maybe it's in the future for them, but not at that moment. And then you pick up market share. So a lot of people get really worried. I get kind of excited about it because I feel like this is an opportunity for us to, we can come up with new ideas. We can pivot. There's so many cool things we can do. And then at the end of the day, we'll probably grow during it as well.
The somewhat diversification that you have, is that something that you planned earlier? It just came, just so happened to just come as things developed. You saw, hey, there's a need for joy lights. Oh, okay. Well, I've got the pest control. I know that, but hey, why don't we add the home inspection? Because you did home inspection in Atlanta as well. Yeah. So, did that kind of diversification come naturally or just, I wouldn't say naturally, but just kind of, you saw the need and filled it, or was it actually a plan?
So the company in Atlanta, like I said earlier, was under one umbrella. So we knew, I knew in my heart that in the future, it'd be better if they were separate because you never know. There could be an exit. There could be, who knows? There's a lot of factors.
Terminix comes in and wants to have pest control, right?
Well, and to that point, I've told my team members because there's a lot of, there's always talk in pest control and now even in the home inspection industry on people buying up companies. And I've made it crystal clear to my two VPs that if that happens, I want them to be the ones to find out. Or if I find out, they're coming to the first meeting. I want them in the room. They're going to be in there and they're going to ride whatever it is with Kristen. They're going to ride it too. The people that got us to wherever we're at, they're going to ride with us at the end as well. So to that point, but yeah, I just knew that there's a lot of reasons from liability to, exits to whatever it is. It's good to break it out. So when we did sell to Terminix loved our culture and they kept our name. So we had to kind of break everything else out. By default, it happened. So it was perfect. And then I just knew everything else after that would also be separate.
What are the conversations that you're having now with your leadership? What are some of the challenges that you're just, obviously they change every season, they change every day, whether it's employee issues or this, that, what are the conversations that you guys are having, this quarter? I know you guys do, I think you just recently, like last month, you kind of, each of the companies, you do a little,
like
get out of town.
Like a retreat. Sometimes we'll go to town. Sometimes it's just, it'll be in our clubhouse or somewhere else, just offsite, away from a computer. But yeah.
What are some of the challenges there?
It's like anybody else. You're talking what we talked about earlier with scale. You're always talking about employees. You're talking about situations where something could be developing positively or negatively. And then how are we going to tackle it? How are we going to approach it? How does the market look? What are our last meeting, we were looking ahead to this year. And so, a lot of that meeting was spent on, all right, what are these targets? We got to have a target, have something to go after. And so what does that look like? Some years that target might change. The whole thing may be different. It may not always be revenue in some cases. A lot of times it is. It's an easy one to watch. Profit, same thing. So it's typical stuff. But the cool thing is that Kristen and myself, we don't go into the room. We know it all. It's not like that. We want a spirited debate. We want disagreements. It's always done in a very considerate way. And then we think if you do that, you'll get the best answer. And so that's our kind of our take on that.
The two VPs that you have now, have they grown up to their level? In other words, through promotion, or were they hired as that?
Yeah. So the one VP was with me in Atlanta, and ultimately it all worked out where, he was excited and came to Florida. The other one came in at a different position, and we knew right away that she could go
when
where
the
she
opportunity
wanted to go.
presented
So,
itself.
Yeah. And then so both Brian and Michelle have both gone straight up.
Give us an example. You say you they're running the company. They're there seeing the day-to-day, things. They're doing the hiring and the firing and so forth. Give us something, and you don't have to mention names. They're listening, they'll know the story, but anyone else listening won't know the difference. But are sometimes where you disagreed with them and whether you went with their idea and said, okay, roll with it, and let's see where it goes. Or you said, no, we can't do that. That we're going to fall off a cliff. What are some kind of disagreements that you may have, or just difference of opinions?
Well, I mentioned earlier. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I mentioned earlier that I love risk. So it's to a fault, probably. I'm very blessed to have Kristen. She's a sounding board. And then the two VPs a lot of times. So a lot of times it'll be things like where I want to amp something up big time, financially, maybe marketing or something like that. And the VPs are like, whoa, how are we going to hit this? If we got to do this and this. So that would be the quickest, most recent thing.
So you are the visionary.
I enjoy, most of my ideas are really, really silly. Right. And every now and then one will hit. But I just like to keep moving forward and trying new things, tinkering with stuff. I don't like to just sit on my hands for too long without trying something. I mean, they're very good about looking very methodically at it and should we do it or not.
And how it's actually going to, the rubber meets the road. You have the vision and they're going, okay, well, how are we actually going to make that happen? This is going to happen and that's going to happen. And it's just not.
They're the ones that have to do it. I mean, they do everything from payroll to writing the check or whatever it is to whatever the thing I wanted to go do they might have to push back on. That's fine. Because again, a lot of times, most of the time when we come together like that, we look back and we're glad it went the way it went. Whether I got what I wanted that time or not, it's often it works out whichever way the kind of group ultimately came together on.
I imagine it probably hasn't always, but it sounds like obviously the collaboration. Is there anything recently where you came in and said, no, we're doing this and not actually taking feedback?
No, because again, I think if I do that, that's detrimental to the culture. That's detrimental to the team. That's detrimental to even their mental health, physical health. Like, no, I have no interest in doing it. Like there's nothing that I'm going to, unless it was, they're not going to see a child that's sick or something like that. Then I might say, get out the door, go, go, go. But no, there's nothing that important that I have to come in like that.
This is what I love about you and your wife, because I sense this from her, and we've never actually sat down and had any lengthy conversation like right now, is this confidence that you have in your people to fulfill their roles and obviously give them a great place to work at. We probably could have a whole nother conversation on the hiring process, which we probably want to bring in your VP and actually interview them on what's the hiring, who's actually doing that process. Cause it's probably something and anyone out there would want to connect, but your confidence in them. And I think one of the, as we talked about earlier, one of the things that just holds the fear everyone has is like making that first hire. And then when you get large enough, am I going to let someone else make decisions for the company has my name on it? To be able to have the confidence in those people to do it, because I think people realize, or don't realize, actually, they don't realize you yourself are going to make just as many mistakes as they are. And the fact that they're actually living it and you're, overseeing multiple companies and seeing things on a 30,000 foot level, they're there in the trenches and actually can give you better feedback or make a better on the ground decision on the front lines than you, because you're too far. You position yourself, and you trust their decision because they're seeing it. And they're going to make, as we know, decisions are made every day. We're making thousands of decisions every day. We make thousands of decisions, big and small, and we could just make just as many mistakes as they did. You're not a home inspector expertise. Like you said, you never climbed up in the attic. So we're not, how are we going to tell this is the way we want our process to go when you do a home inspection? You're not involved in that conversation.
Correct.
But you trust the guys that have been doing it, that have done it enough times the wrong way that they've kind of tuned down that this is the best way at the moment, at least.
100%. And advice for that person trying to hire that first person or second or third person is that, and this is ultimately what I had to look at, is if I'm doing it today, I'm doing it tomorrow. So I mentioned payroll earlier. All right. There was not too long ago, I was running payroll. I was, Kristen and me had access years earlier. It was just my brother and I. So it was never out there other than just the owners would see it. I realized a few years ago that, like, again, if I'm doing it now, I'm going to have to do it tomorrow. So I'm going to teach someone else to do it. So our VPs, they run it all. They have full access to everything. They know every penny. Chris and myself they know everything, because if they don't have that full picture, how are they going to run this thing?
Right.
So they see every penny in those respective companies, every single dollar, they know where it goes. And then now they have the autonomy to go out there and the decisions now they have more clarity in their decisions because they know where the money is and where it's going.
Your attitude towards it's more important to hire the right person. You can, I'm sure both these people weren't, when you first met them, you obviously hire them as VPs. You hired them with their initial starting positions. Now they've grown within your company to these positions. What are you doing to provide them, almost like a continuing culture education, development? There's things that you help them so that they stay sharp.
We don't do anything like with an agenda of, I'm going to do this, so he or she thinks this.
Mhm.
But we do things fun, and we do team building activities organically. And it just turns out where that bond is made. Like,
Mhm.
on Valentine's Day, we took some scooter rides in Amelia Island with some of our team members, like our leaders. Just things like that. You don't have to overthink it. It's really, a culture is not that hard to figure out. It's really not. And I think they just know what's in our heart.
Well, I'm talking, I guess my question was more from the technical side, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, to oversee all those books. They didn't go to school,
right.
to Harvard to be,
Yeah. So with
What do you do
payroll, I walked them through it a couple times. They figured it out. They took it and ran with it. With industry related things, like I mentioned earlier, we had that larger group that we're a part of. We're a part of other groups. There's always continuing education. Pest control, it is an amazing industry unto itself. There's so much education inside of that industry. So we're constantly sending people to different places to learn. So yeah, as far as the technical and that side of it, our team is phenomenal.
Almost like the way you mentioned earlier, like trends and stuff. Hey, we know at this time of the year. So that's something they, of course, obviously having grown up in the company, they saw, but didn't necessarily put it to play. But now they're the leadership and understanding, hey, we need to, hey, maybe we need to fire that poison because we don't, we need to cut back, or we need to hire, or whatever it may be. Or, hey, because of the market conditions, we need to bump everybody, some living wage amount. The seeing those things and constantly be balancing, I think doesn't come natural to people.
Yeah.
Especially at the leadership levels that they're at. We would like to think that the, Harvard Business School trains those guys to come in and be CEOs of companies, but not really. From that standpoint, I think we're better off hiring a veteran who's been to war and led, dozens of men and women is going to give you probably better leadership and understanding all those inner workings, because they're being trained constantly to handle that.
We just did. We just hired a veteran for a top position, West Point grad. We've hired multiple veterans on all kinds of different levels over the years. So 100%. I would take someone in the trenches in those industries all day long over someone who's book smart.
So how many of all the companies, Jacksonville World Producers, because I know Kristen's got a couple support staff there how many employees technically are you?
Yeah. So I think when we sold the one in Atlanta, it was around 100. So most of them went with Terminex. So we're probably back up to around 40 something now, somewhere in that ballpark.
Here in Jackson, about 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. And that counts Tampa as well.
I actually asked ChatGPT to create some questions. A couple of those questions were ChatGPT questions.
Awesome.
What do we have for the future? What do you, I have, my gut feeling is you're going to need another Joy Lights van. Or I don't know, you might have a couple of vans already, but become Christmas time, you're probably going to need another one.
Yeah, it's that business is so much fun. It does truly bring joy. Like it's our installers who are out there in the field, oh my gosh, they said the families, especially the ones at dusk when they were finishing up and they would come out. We had families email us pictures of it. It just, that's so cool. But the future for us is bright. We are, always looking to do the next thing. We, one thing that's near and dear to us, to Kristen and me, is charitable work. We just came back from a mission trip to build a house in Mexico. All of our companies have a charitable element to them where a certain percentage of revenue goes over to charities. So that's really big with us. Our church, we're a big part of that. We love where we go to church. So we're a lot of cool things happening over there. Showing up physically to us is important. Again, if you're not taking care, if I'm the owner, leader, or CEO, and I'm not taking care of my body, what is that saying to our team? So trying to push myself.
Well, I don't know
there.
if everyone can run like you do, but
I did my first marathon last year. So I'm going to take a little bit of break on that. The running's still there. I'm in a fantastic group of men, a workout group called F3 that I post about a good bit. It's an amazing male leadership group that I'm in. It's so cool and so good for the soul. So just living like a fun, big, joyful life where just encourage people, have fun with it, try to stay out of that negative space as much as possible. We don't watch news at our house. Every now and then I'll read a Wall Street Journal article, but for the most part, unless it's very specific, we're not reading about the run of the mill, terrible things that are happening. We stay away from politics, political science major, but we don't watch. Kristen will let me watch a presidential debate every now and then, but for the most part, that TV's not tuned.
No,
to
I shut
any of those
it
channels.
off since the last election. So I haven't had, yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
I do know Chicago's going to have a new mayor. That's all I know.
we talked about that. Kristen's not controversial, and I kind of feed on some of that political game just because, again, that was my major and I enjoy it. But I'll tap in a little bit around big elections and stuff like that. But when we moved here in 2016, we had turned all that off.
I mean, I think I was telling my dad this. I mean, because he grew up obviously reading the newspaper, right? That's what you did every morning. You got the newspaper and you read the newspaper, coffee, or when you had a break at work, you're reading the newspaper. But there's no difference to me between those news media companies and like a YouTube or a Facebook, whose sole goal is to keep you on their channel.
Correct.
And so they're putting stuff that entertains you, whatever. At least YouTube, you can get on a total positive stream and just have all this positive stuff because that's what you like. So they keep feeding it to you, where the news media just feeds off that it can really you start changing, your mind, like, oh, I got to turn this thing off.
Right.
And some people don't ever come to that conscious level saying, what am I listening to? And shut it off. I totally agree. If we finish with this, Red Heather Motherhan, I know Kristen was there in the audience for that. And she mentions one of her things, what's the book over there, Overcome Your Villains. And in your personal life and through you had to have some people that were, fall under those villains. Some of those people that's like, when she said she thought was a friend, but every time she had lunch with her, she just felt like down when she left because that friend was politely basically putting her down during the lunch. What have you done in your life to kind of, like I said, we shut off the news. That's easy. We just click the switch, but kind of, distance yourself from those who don't bring joy.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you do. You distance yourselves from them and you cut them out. I mean, if in the example you're using that happens, there's no reason to have lunch and waste your time. Time is, with me, time, freedom, that's the most important thing right now. Mm-hmm. And if someone was doing that and bringing my energy down or being negative, I want no part of that. The people that are gossiping and being negative, there's no place for that inside of our personal life or our business life. There's just not. It's just not. And that includes family, friends, acquaintances, whatever. If it gets to that point, then we need to push away a little bit. And I've tried to be very intentional on doing my part on that side of it as well. Mm-hmm. So stay away from the negativity as much as possible. And then surrounding yourself with people that do inspire you, that are doing good things, that are taking care of their bodies, that are doing amazing things in business. Be surrounded by those kind of people. And then you get inspired as well.
I have found, because there was a point where, I was getting, politics and doing so, but really for over 2 years now or longer, I, shut from on my social media, because social media will feed you what you click on. It'll keep feeding you that same kind of material. Yep. And if you shut that out of your life and now start clicking and liking, people's positive posts or making comments, that's the post you're going to start getting the feed stuff. You could really, as much as people spend on social media, could really clean up that just simply by only responding. Don't like these negative things. Get out of these rants that people go on, and all of a sudden you'll just see your social media clean light pretty quickly. Actually,
to me, I mean, one of the saddest things is you go to a restaurant and the two parents are on their phones and the kids are just sitting there, or all four of them are. Like, there's got to be boundaries. Yeah, social media has its benefits for sure, but there's another dark side of it as well. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that it is there. So you got to be careful. The political game, the religious game, whatever it is. And when I say that in such a way of pushing agendas on people, whether it be politically or religious. There's just some hot topic things that it just makes no sense whatsoever to try to opine on. In my opinion, at least in our life, we don't do.
Well, I've come to the ultimate opinion is that's why I mentioned your confidence that you guys have in your people. You can also have that in people that are around you and interacting. And some people, you feel they're being misled. I mean, you really might as well bang your head against the wall, because they will never admit they've been misled. They'll have to find out, and cycles happen and come around. Now, we don't hopefully want to wait for a long cycle, but we have, it's like the business. You got to let that person go out there and find out for themselves. I mean, there's only so much you can guide them and so forth. So like you said, yeah, to try to put your political opinions or religious opinions on somebody versus maybe just showing them a direction and they don't want to take it, move on. Just, don't make it a big deal from that standpoint. Let's finish up, since you brought it up a little bit there and made me think of your kids. So imagine your father had a successful business, but not to the level that you have, I would imagine. And you correct me if I'm wrong. And what you're being able to provide your children. What are some of the things that you guys focus on? Because you did talk about family time. I know you guys are hitting some golf balls here recently and that sort. What are you trying to instill in your kids? Obviously, I assume that whatever they decide to do, they're going to be leaders themselves. What are some of the things that you're doing with the fam?
Yeah, well, every day God, Kristen, Jake, and Abby. That's everything to me. Everything else there's other important items too right after that, but for me, God, Kristen, Jake, and Abby. So I'm just trying to work on myself every day to get better, to make sure that whatever life they want to live, Jake and Abby want to live long term, they'll have opportunities to do that. Now, one of our biggest challenges, anybody who's living in certain areas, you have a lot of things that others may not have. And so I think one of our biggest challenges as our kids are 8 and 10 years old, as they get older, is we got to make sure they understand, like, we're very blessed in what we have. We have to serve others. Like that service and giving back and things like that are critical. So we try to instill in them very early how important that kind of stuff is. Before we get into those teenage years and beyond, which I've heard stories from other people can be tough.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing for us, just making sure that they have, strong foundation to build from so they can go after whatever they want.
Do you feel they're at the age yet to where you kind of expose them to, I know Kristen's very involved with like Rethreaded and the juvenile detention center. Have you exposed them a little bit to that so they have an understanding that not everybody has it the way they have it?
Yes. And when we travel, they'll see, homeless people and they'll ask questions that'll give us an opportunity to bring up a conversation. They've done charitable work at Christmas time for the soldiers. They have, we made a video. I made a video of our mission trip. So I showed them that and we had a discussion after that. As a matter of fact, we're going to try to take them on a mission trip soon so they can experience it as well. So without question, that is huge. Again, at the end of the day, all this stuff, a lot of the stuff we all talk about is just noise. But what are the important things?
Right.
Where's your energy really? Where should your energy really be focused? You focus the energy, what I found, in the right spots. Everything else takes care of itself.
It's finding the right spots.
Yeah.
Brian, anything else you want to add on?
No, I appreciate you having me on.
I think that was a great conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk all afternoon about business. One of my challenges in life is I often have said many times I should have been a psychology major, because sometimes I'll get caught up in the why did that person do that? Why did they say that? Or why are they not? And because that's my curiosity, which sometimes leads to gossip, unfortunately. That's my little negative thing. It's because I just have this curiosity about people and why they do certain things. And, my curiosity with you and Kristen is the high level and the confidence you have in people, and then run a home inspection company. You've never done a home inspection. A lot of people be like, well, how do you do that unless you're like Elon Musk or something, and they just, stroke a check and, have a big company created. I mean, you've grown it that way. And it's just that it's another level, and how some people, not to say that not everyone can have it, but everyone reaches that lid or fear level, like you said, to make that one extra swing of the axe, to take that one extra step, keep doing it for another day or another week or another month. And all of a sudden a YouTube video goes viral, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, hold on a second.
I go back to a JV basketball when I played.
Best years of my life.
I knew that I wasn't making varsity. So, but I go back.
Basketball coach.
Yeah.
I'm going to Bob Masterson. Love you, brother. You're still out there. I know you are.
I just look back on it and I'm like, there were tons of times where I would pass. This is a long time ago, but I would pass the ball. And I look back and why did you not just shoot it? Like, you were a good shooter. Why did you not just shoot it? And there was a long gap of years where I didn't think about that. But as I get older, I go back to that all the time now. I'm like, just take the shot. Just shoot it. What is it going to hurt? You miss. Okay, fine. You learn from it and then you'll make the next one.
That's what I'm teaching my son.
I telling him, he was on this winter team, and there's some good ball players, some quick ball players, but I said, dude, what you can do is just as good. Just because he's a really great ball handler, better than you, does not mean he's taking better shots.
Right.
They are making some layups, but I've seen you at other times, because they had the 3-on-3 league where you get a little open, where I've seen you turn around and hit 4 3-pointers in just a few minutes because you didn't think about it. You just went and cleared the ball and popped that shot, swish. You were rolling with it. And then when we got in the 5-on-5, he was a little more, I was like, no, dude, let it rip. You got an open shot. That's your shot. You got to take it.
There's nothing that brings more joy than watching the children finally hit that pinnacle of making the shot or scoring the goal or whatever it is. I know with Jake and his touchdowns on the tackle football field, the first one he had, I could see, it was zooming in. Of course, I'm rolling on it.
Right.
And I could see that huge smile. And then the other day, she led her team in scoring in basketball. It was just draining shots left and right. And just to see her little face, same thing. Of course, I'm rolling on it. And I zoom in, and just to be able to go back and look at those smiles, there's nothing that brings, more joy to us than seeing that.
Well, I want to, if I can go, if I'm not a rant, but I was, my son goes to one of the local basketball. There's several around, but these guys got their own gym and so forth. And I got to know one of the guys who was running one of the gyms, and he was, talking about the level of some of the players. I said, hold on a minute, bro. He was talking about some of the players were there because they felt his parents just dropped them off. And it was like a babysitting thing for an hour and a half or whatever. I said, hold on. You don't know what's going on in that kid's life all day long. And it might've been miserable. And so he's miserable coming here. It's not that he doesn't want to be here. It's because he knows where he's got to go in an hour when this is over. And it's not good. But all of us, you and I, you talking about JV basketball was the best years of my life. And my basketball coaches and Bob Masterson, love you. And I need to reach out to him. The plays that go on in my head, we only remember that whatever shot we made or the steal in the pass we made, those are the things we live with as adults. And to create those opportunities where, she might not even remember that game because there's another game that's going to supersede that later on, but they'll only remember a few of those plays. And that's what all that matters is giving them the opportunity that she was and it might be the last time she was the top scorer on the team. We don't know. Right. But that she's going to live with that and those memories as I have JV basketball memories, as obviously you do too. And we still play those in our mind.
You're taller than me, so your memories are probably It was fun.
Yes. Appreciate you coming on. Obviously we should have both. I was thinking about is having a couple of your inner circle, that you talked about, just 2 or 3 in a little business roundtable would probably be a great show. I think everyone, especially this, the realtors, I think, because they're small business owners too, but all these owners around here that need more of these masterminds, need more of these collaborative groups that you're part of and created. So Brian, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You can reach Brian what information he'll give me so you can reach him. We'll be in the show notes. And he is on social media, so you can definitely reach out to him there as he's posting his kids' photos all the time. So, and his travels as well. So thanks for coming on, Brian.
Thank you.